Okay, Doc, Humanitarian Watch on Ukraine, because this week marks the 4th anniversary of Russia's shameful, full-scale invasion on Ukraine. And we have to go back with some memories to this time 4 years ago when we were at the border between Poland and Ukraine. And remembering all those people crossing the border with, luckily, not many problems from the hosting countries happening, but immediately the first days of war, 4 million people crossing, a little bit more than 1 million stayed in Poland, 1.2 million in Germany. People right now are almost in every European country, and not only European country. But thinking about this time, the big solidarity movement.
Yeah, it feels very different now, right?
It feels a bit different. It doesn't feel completely different. It's not the same as the feelings towards refugees from the south, but it is different. And the policy for refugees from Ukraine are changing. But I was wondering if we can start from, like, where are we now, 4 years into this conflict?
I mean, it's kind of disgusting to say that it feels like we are exactly where we were when you woke me up to tell me that it started. I was like shocked by it. I think everybody was shocked by it actually happening.
Everybody was shocked, but it was like sort of in the air, right? But in the end, nobody really believed that it's gonna go this way.
It just didn't feel like he was actually gonna cross that line, right? And then he did, and then it was like, oh, and boy, has he ever crossed that line. And now here we are on, a year past this declaration of how we're gonna solve the crisis within one day. On day one, our fearless leader is going to solve the war and bring world peace and earn that peace prize, right? And here we are over a year later since he's actually in power and nothing.
Yes, that letters were sent to several speakers of parliaments in different European countries asking to sign those letters to ask for Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump, and now big scandals when some of them refused to do that. But I want
good on them.
Yes, but I want to say one thing that the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs said, and he said that if Donald Trump will lead to a fair end of war for Ukraine, he will himself sign this letter. If this is going to happen, if this is going to be a fair truth or end of war for Ukraine, right? He made it very clear that it has to be fair. It doesn't have to be just stop it and give Russia half of your territory.
I think we could unpack how it doesn't feel like what Russia's asking for will ever be fair for the Ukrainians. But in 2025, we're sitting at unprecedented numbers of civilian deaths in such a it's 2026, and here we are with barely any time into the new year, and we're already dealing with a level of death that is trending to be higher than the first year of the war. And there's been consistency for the last 4 years of how many people have died, but the numbers are pretty unbelievable. And the scariest part about it is the number of civilians injured. It's not even just those who have been killed, but all of this kind of non-battlefield action, bombing cities, drone strikes, missile strikes on civilian targets, not even just trying to claim they're hitting an infrastructure for military, but literally just bombing apartment buildings. It's terrifying every day of the week there, and it has been for 4 years. It has not really stopped, but the numbers right now for 25 alone, and we're just right into 26, you had 2,500 civilians killed, 12,000 civilians injured, 1,000 kids, 2,500 kids injured.
And apparently the numbers for 2025 are 31% higher than for 24.
Yeah, it's trending up. And this is at a time period when, all the talks about peace. And at the same exact moments, you have unbridled death.
Yes.
So it's the opposite.
I think right now it's February. We have to highlight how difficult it is for Ukrainians who decided to stay in Ukraine to live and to lead normal life. Power grids have been attacked massively by Russians, and there's basically no electricity, no power, no hot water in many areas of Ukraine. Some parts of Kyiv do not have electricity. And it's very hard for Ukrainians to manage this because it's a constant reparation of those power grids, and then another attack, and something is happening again, and it's damn cold there right now.
Yeah, I was just at the border of Belarus with Lithuania, and it was -20 during the day, and this intensity of cold in the middle of the daytime with sunlight was really overwhelming. And you have, then it's at night, but there was always this immediate opportunity to go into an actual heated building. And you don't have that if you knock out the power grid. So I just, thinking about it, people are losing their toes, their feet, their hands. I mean, there's amputations constantly happening because of frostbite and all sorts of complications with infections that happen. If you have an injury and then you are trapped in these types of conditions, that injury is going to potentially become fatal. Something that would have maybe been something handled in triage at a hospital could become life-threatening, if not guaranteed to kill you. So it feels like we're going back in time in terms of like what happens on a battlefield. You hear about this when you read history books about how a small little wound on in a battle, and like a close hand-to-hand battle, could lead to your death because of it not being attended, getting infected, all sorts of things. So if you don't have access to the hospitals, if the hospitals don't have power, if you have no heat, I mean, how do you function?
Exactly.
And how do you then take any type of conversation about peace seriously while your envoys are there talking with people about a peace plan on terms that are outrageous, while at the same time your leader is like dealing with the fact that your adversary is bombing your city capitals constantly?
Yes. And I think it's worth mentioning that we have a really big group of internally displaced people, right?
Yeah.
People usually talk about refugees, meaning people who are outside the country, but we have a really big number of people, namely it's around 3.6 million people who are internally displaced, meaning they had to change their location. Usually it's from the east of the country to the west, where it was safer, or to Kyiv, which is, there's no safe place really in Ukraine. When we were in Lviv, which is so far west, even there were some attacks, right? So that's a massive problem for people. The housing is scarce, and the ones who are returning, they are saying that this is a big problem, because what are they returning to, right? If they are in the east, they most probably lost their houses. If they are living somewhere in the center, maybe there is something, maybe not. The living conditions are poor, so they are somewhere in a different part of Ukraine, yet there's not enough space for everybody, right?
It's also just really difficult. Just put yourself in the perspective of a child, a young kid. You got 2 million children living outside of the country right now as refugees, and you have
1/3, yes, according to UNICEF.
It's an insane number of people. I mean, and you know, we have like the women and the children first, okay? It's not like, it's like a Radiohead song. It's ridiculous. Like, and then here you have all the men fighting back home, and they're dying in crazy numbers as well. But if you're a child and you're in your formative years, and you flee like Kherson, and you make it out of an open battle zone, and then you make your way to what you feel is a safe area, and then suddenly that safe area is being bombed on a daily basis. I mean, how do you even focus on school? I mean, we have a lot of members of our community that are dealing with a lot of terrible, horrific news from home in all their respective countries. And it's destabilizing to the point where they can't focus on just regular life, and their day-to-day life is not being threatened.
Yes.
And now you put yourself in the perspective of being a 6, 10-year-old, 12-year-old child. It's really nuts.
And sadly, as you already mentioned, the support for Ukrainian refugees is changing, right? So we have around 6.7 Ukrainian refugees all around the world. Most of them, 93%, decided to stay in Europe. The rest, most of them went to the United States or Canada, usually places where they had relatives. And the largest number at this moment, that's Germany, then Poland, so 1.2 in Germany, a little bit more than 1 million in Poland, and then I believe we have Czechia.
Czechia, yeah.
Yes. So we have Ukrainian refugees in basically almost every European Union country. And the idea was, when the conflict started, that the temporary protection directive will be put into power. This mechanism was actually prepared, voted in 2001, and this was the very first time when they decided to finally use it. And great, it managed the conflict, and it proven to be working. And Ukrainian refugees got a lot of support from each country, from like residency privileges, some kind of basic housing and healthcare.
It proved that it's possible, right?
Proving that it is possible, right?
For a massive number of people within a very short period of time. It is completely possible, both politically, logistically,
it was.
Emotionally, socially, every way.
As it should be, right? However, it is changing a little bit. So first of all, there are differences in how this mechanism works in different countries. It's just a framework, right? What should be guaranteed, but then the details, right? If there's some kind of direct support or indirect support. And like Germany and Belgium seem to have the biggest, the largest support for refugees, because if you're a Ukrainian refugee in Germany, you're receiving so-called civilian allowance, which is around 560 euros per month, plus some housing support, of course, like all the other things that refugees are receiving in Germany, like free healthcare, some support with your unemployment and language. However, a new regulation is already in German parliament proposing cutting already those benefits for Ukrainians by now 100 euros per month, right? But there's already like something happening. We know politically
it's going
works.
The other way. And it starts when it starts going the other way. It goes in little bits and pieces, and then much like a snowball, going down the hill. Here we go, and then soon you will see a full-on exit. Exit stage left from those who want to support because they may have a danger politically to be reelected, and so then they'll start pandering to a side of voters that they're really never going to get, but they'll still water down their own morality. In the process of trying to convince them that they should vote for them, even though it's just undoing them from the other side of the voters who would probably vote for them because they stand up for their ideals and their morality. But we're at the beginning stages of that happening. We're only 4 years in to, unfortunately, I feel like if some other international mechanism doesn't hold Putin accountable and stop this, we're looking at many, many more years of this because this is what has happened historically. Like these don't end
but
this
like
way.
what else can be done? Like there's also already an international arrest warrant for him. I mean, like what else can be done?
Actually, put it into effect. I mean.
Well, he's not leaving the country.
Hey, listen, our fearless leader just proved it's very possible to just swoop into another country and take a sitting leader and put him into, hold him accountable. So hey, listen, if you prove that you can do it, then I don't know. How about everybody
proposing
just
some
step
very
up?
practical solutions, as I hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold them accountable. Like actually.
Okay. Going back to Ukrainian refugees.
Okay. Sorry for the related tangent.
Yeah. So sorry. What I wanted to also mention is that in this on the other end of the support for Ukrainians. We have Hungary, for example, when it comes to European Union countries, and people do not get any direct support except for some housing. But recently also in Hungary, it was voted that those Ukrainian refugees who come from Western Ukraine, they will not be allowed to get this free housing because it's relatively safe.
That's
right?
bullshit. I'm sorry, but we were there. They were bombing Lviv. They continue to do it. They bomb all over the country. We still have the air raid app on our phones. It still goes off occasionally if I leave it on. It still happens.
I deleted it.
I know, but like it was, but like it's still like that's fucked up. I'm sorry.
But
that's start telling you which geographical area of the country you're allowed to get protections because of.
I saw some news how Orban right now is just scaring people with all their money going to Ukraine. So there are billboards of Ursula von der Leyen and telling Hungarian people that pay for Ukraine, right? And I was like, sorry, it's pretty ridiculous how it looks like, but it works for some people, right?
No, it works for most people, unfortunately.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say is that when I looked into the employment rates for Ukrainian refugees living in different countries, it's not even the ones who give the most generous allowances to Ukrainians that lead in those statistics. Poland is number one when it comes to employment for Ukrainians. And it's true, Poland has big gaps on the job market, and Ukrainians just came and filled those gaps, right? So at this moment, 78% of Ukrainians who live in Poland work. 78%, that's a really big number, right? Lithuania is right after with 72%, and Germany is 31%. In my mind, this proves that language, because the similarity of languages is obvious here, right? And of course, like the gaps that were there, but there are also gaps in the German labor market. But the language, first of all, that was so easy for Ukrainians to just start working immediately, because if you had to communicate with your employer, Polish to Ukrainian, that's absolutely fine to communicate.
It felt very
Not
quick.
if you maybe have to do some deep research, right? But if you work at a station, if you work at some kind of a store or something, that's absolutely fine to communicate.
Wherever we go now, I'm constantly stumbling and bumbling through Polish with Ukrainians. They're the ones working in the cafes and the bars and the coffee shops and in a lot of different retail spaces, and they're in all cities, they're everywhere, but they've integrated smoothly.
Totally.
There's not been a significant, I mean, there are some pushbacks against things on
There are some
the
nationalistic
agricultural and
movements right
nationalistic
now.
movements, but for the most part, there's no open antagonism against Ukrainian presence in the countries.
Yes, they are not very big, but there are. There's one movement that is really growing, and not going to comment on that right now, but there has been an independent research made by UNHCR and Deloitte showing that Ukrainians at this moment, it was for 2024, Ukrainians boost Polish economy by 2.7%. So if they would be gone, it would be done, right? So that's quite a lot.
Okay, so they're boosting another country's economy when if everyone on the international level would just honor the laws and the rules of existence and actually like a behavior of war, then that boost would be back in Ukraine where they lost 30% within the first year.
And
could you imagine that, losing 30% of your GDP in one month?
That's absolutely
basically
horrible. But this is a big fear in the country, right? How many people will actually return, or how fast after the war, if it will be possible to rebuild it, or now we're going to have all those young people who were graduating from schools in other countries. Will they come back? Will they not come back? How would they support, right? It's a big question mark.
You're going to have a similar scenario to what's happening in Syria right now. And
yes.
Where are the conditions on the ground appropriate to rebuild? Who's financing that rebuild? Is there going to be another, international version of a Marshall Plan where America basically helped financially save Europe's rebuilding process after World War II? Are we going to have the same thing in Ukraine? The same thing that Washington is right now advocating to happen in Syria?
Yeah.
Are we going to? Is that going to be done? Is that minimal amount of effort going to be put in from an international coalition, or are they just going to abandon them in the process? And then if they do that, then expect those Ukrainians to stay in your country, because why would they be able to? How could they go back to a place without power?
There's already a recommendation.
In the East in particular.
Yes, there's already a recommendation by the European Commission for this scenario. Once the war ends, what to do next, right? How to facilitate the return or prepare a path towards longer residency.
But it's going to be a $500 billion investment to rebuild Ukraine.
I actually thought that it's maybe even more.
Well, it will become more if it continues this way at this pace for 2026. If 26 looks worse than 25, as 25 looked worse than 24, it's gonna cross $1 trillion to rebuild this country, and who's gonna pay for that?
Exactly. So where are we with the peace talks? What are your gods telling you? Are we on the path towards something, anything, at least some kind of a ceasefire?
Well, I mean,
Well, there was a ceasefire already. That
honestly,
was just laugh
yeah,
out loud.
but this is all, it feels laughable. So again, unless there's some sort of like magic at the last 11th hour, like, holy crap, they did that and they said yes to that. I don't see how it's going to end in this year, because what Russia's asking for is unacceptable on anyone's standards. I don't know a single American or a single Polish citizen who would ever say yes to what Russia's asking for. And they're willing to go fight to the death over independence and freedom for lots of things, right? So they want to basically take over not just all of the territory that they already currently hold, but they want more. They want the entirety of Donbass and Luhansk. They want Kherson. They want Zaporizhzhia. They want, like, pretty much just carve it out and keep the rest. They want Crimea permanently. They want to just clarify that Russian is the national language of this territory. They want no war crimes tribunals. They want NATO to never be a thing for Ukraine. They want Ukraine to be demilitarized. They want Ukraine to not have any military capacity to defend itself again.
We know how this ends, right?
How in the world could any leader agree to any of that?
Yeah.
And it's obviously not the same reality, but if you think about how hard it was to create a peace deal in Israel and Palestine during the PLO times, and Arafat, and then Abbas with the Palestinian Authority, like, you can't get an actual peace treaty to be honored by the populace if it's not in their benefit. So as you said earlier, like this MP, right, who said I would sign on to this if it's good for the Ukrainians. How could it be?
No.
And Zelensky is saying that most of the things you're asking for would require a referendum. And I do not see the majority of Ukrainians passing
Absolutely.
like giving away a third, if not more, of the country, and then being completely exposed.
Yeah, and you know what? I spoke to several of our Ukrainian friends and students, asking if maybe there is some kind of push or willingness from certain groups in the country to say, like, stop. Okay, we just want this to end. We cannot continue any further. Because I imagine that people who live under occupation, they're done, right? They may be really exhausted by everything, and people who are in the areas where the fights are happening, that's extremely hard on them. But all the people I spoke to, they claim that no, like that also 4 years in and so many casualties, that we cannot stop it now and give half of the territory to
what
Putin.
was it for them?
What was it for them? Why did our sons, brothers died? What was it for, right? So, yeah.
Every day you read some headline and some politician in the world talking about an existential threat. This is an existential threat to the people of Ukraine. So how in the world could you just, after all this time, just turn it away and be like, okay, fine, just stop? So that just proves the point that if you have enough military might, you can just bully people, physically murder everybody in your country, and then just wait them out. And it's very clear that Russia is willing to follow. It's interesting, and I'm going to make a probably provocative statement here, but Putin jumps in and says we need to purify Ukraine of the Nazis at the beginning of the war, and everyone's like, "What are you talking about? This is insanity." The irony here is that what Russia is doing, what Putin is doing, is on par with the level of death for their own people that Hitler and the Nazis were willing to suffer during World War II. They were willing to have 2 million plus casualties, and Russia's already over 1 million. They've already killed 1 million of their own people to try to take this territory. They don't seem to care. They're literally throwing their own sons and daughters at this situation, at this. It's crazy.
Because
so
the human life is not that important, right?
But it's it's nuts. Like 2 million people have been injured, or like total verified casualties.
I think 1.2 million is total casualties, dead, missing, and injured.
Yeah, 1.2. Yeah.
Right.
So and this is like this total verified casualties, and it's obviously a low number. It's very conservative because a lot of these independent open source
Yeah.
finders are like researchers are like they can only report individual names that they have found, and so there must be more that can't be determined based off of the territories they can't get access to. But the Center for Strategic International Studies is saying these numbers are on par with a standard of 3-to-1 ratio, where for every death there is 3 injuries. And so these numbers are staggering. And the numbers are both in human cost and in actual financial costs double to triple for Russia than it is for Ukraine, which is nuts because all the war is taking place inside Ukraine. So the Ukrainian forces are, holy shit, like they are literally holding their own in a war of attrition here. This would not be a war of attrition that would rival what you see in the 80s with Iran and Iraq. You wouldn't be able to hold this line if it wasn't for what they're willing to do.
Yeah.
So coming back to what you just said about how they're not willing to cede this land, they're really not. So I don't see a referendum going in the favor of losing any territory. Historically, I think that we could end up in more of a kind of a Korea scenario with like a DMZ in the Donbass, Luhansk area, where this is the area that becomes demilitarized, and there's an armistice, but no final full peace treaty. At any given moment, this could kick off again. We'll end up having a fully militarized area where we'll always be on the edge of some sort of potential like outbreak again.
Yeah.
And you know, Putin keeps pushing now to say that Zelensky has to stand for elections. And I'd be like, go fuck yourself, bro. Like, seriously.
during the war.
Seriously.
Yeah. And you know, it's being said that it's going to be a pretty interesting year, difficult year for both economies, right? Ukraine relying a lot on the partners and all the loans and support from different European Union countries and partly United States. But for Russia as well, because they rely predominantly on their internal market. And the question is how much more it can take as a system.
Well, I mean, everybody thought that all the sanctions and everything in 22 was going to like cripple Russia immediately, and then the war would come to an end, and it would be kind of the equivalent of if NATO and the U.S. and Europe actually just pushed back immediately militarily, like and said, no, go back in your lane, bro. Like that's it, you're out. Don't even cross the border. You crossed over, but okay, you made a mistake. We'll give you a chance to return. So they thought the economic side would do it, but it didn't. They only contracted like 3% as a nation for the year, and then they just pivoted. So they have so much natural resource of their own that they're just giving it away almost for free to like create an alternative market. So now you've got, they lean east, they lean southeast. So now they're willing to sell to India and to China, and they're willing to create all sorts of partnerships. And you've got you're kind of creating an alternative system economically in the world and it's not completely BRICS with like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, but it is along those lines. And now they're actually still able to have a lot of influence in Africa and in Southeast Asia. And they've basically tried to position themselves with a lot of backing from China, quietly, but significantly.
But they
that
spent
get to be
a
separate.
lot on this war.
Oh my God, they spend like, it's nuts. Like depending on what you count in the list of expenditures, you can increase or decrease these numbers. But in some estimates, it's like $1 billion a day. Like if you add up all the things that they're spending money on, it's like $1 billion a day on their side. It's like 175 million for Ukraine a day. It's nuts every day. So how long can their system hold that? And I think the argument right now is like less about the sanctions against Russia and more about the pressure on India and China and Brazil and whatever, like pressure on Iran. Jesus, like what the fuck is going on there? But like the idea of pressuring the actual trading partners that Russia does have who are willing to take their cheap oil. I mean, they're willing to sell their resources at like pennies on the dollar to still have some sales. That is actively financing Russia's ability to continue this. They're actively conscripting all their people to continue to throw the humanity of it at the whole entire scenario. And if the international community does not pressure those trading partners, then I don't see the economic downturn hitting Russia hard enough to get them to stop. They won't have the motivation and the incentive to stop because they seriously don't seem to give a shit about their own people. They're willing to just throw them at the war. And the other side of this is the most interesting hit is that Russia is kind of like cutting off their own future. All of their best and brightest, IT, tech, one of their advantages has always been that they've had like such a hardcore science-based and technologically based workforce. And all of these young guys are like, I'm not going to go die, because the chance of dying is so high that they're leaving. So they're purging their own best and brightest.
But, you know, the same, but in a slightly different way, is happening for Ukraine, right? So many young, super promising men are right now fighting in this war and dying for the country.
But when you look at this on a historical lens later, this will be the ultimate own goal for Russia. They're scoring on themselves. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, they're just turning around and destroying their own future, their own present and their own future by doing all of these things. So yes, it's terrible what's happening to Ukrainians, and yes, the long-term impact for their country, but they will have allyship. They will have financial partners to rebuild. They will have investment infrastructure. There will be natural economic forces that will gravitate towards rebuilding, because that will benefit those companies, those MNCs from US, Canada, Europe. But what about, is anyone going to go run in and try to rebuild Russia? Is anyone really going to run to their fit, like to the Russians? Like, I mean, the people. And I know it's almost impossible for them to truly like resist this. So many brave people are doing it in the streets despite the impact, but so many people can't even speak. Even after they've left, because of the dangers that their family members face at home. It's a straight up criminal operation. It's really, really scary. What is it like? We have a lot of Russian friends as well who are outside, and their lives are irreparably damaged by this as well. Their reputations are destroyed by this. True. They're honest automatically when they say where they're from. There's this pregnant pause in every conversation, and it's unfair to them, because they were part of the dissent all along for the last 20 years. And now suddenly, even if you were like a freedom fighter, you know, for political and democratic ideals in Russia, you don't have legs to stand on outside. You won't get the grant. You won't get, you know, you won't get the financial support. You may not get the job because, oh, well, I know a Ukrainian applied too. And so the individual Russians are screwed in this deal as well.
Yeah.
And it's an own goal. That's the way I see it. Like, Russia, Putin in particular, is destroying. Yeah, he will go down in the history books as the man who destroyed Russia. He wants to rebuild the Soviet Union, and he will, in the process, destroy Russia.
Sounds like
fuck him. Sorry.
Sounds like a conclusion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this episode. Next one in 2 weeks' time.
Yep. See you soon.